start the recording, and we have started. We are in week 3. Your first assignment, which was in chapter 1, is due tonight because y'all have 2 weeks on each of the chapters except the last chapter. It was all paper and pencil type work. Although you didn't have to write it with paper, with pencil or pen. You could have typed it into a Word document, which would be the best thing to do. And then submitted those answers all in the Dropbox. I had the question raised to me yesterday about where was the questions that you're supposed to be answering, and they are at the end of the chapters where you're going to be doing the questions / exercises in each chapter. And we will be working on the ones dealing with tau all the way through the book, because they actually build as you go on. Once you get into chapter 3, that they're going to build on each other going through the chapters. So we'll be staying with those on. As a matter of fact, what you're going to do in chapter 3, besides creating your database, which I will give to you, is that you will be going in and pulling information out of it. A lot of it's similar to what you just did in chapter 1. Chapter 2 is what we're now in for the next 2 weeks. And the title of the chapter is Database Design Fundamentals. They go into details here about what makes up a database, giving you the correct terms on it and describing it to you. Chapter 1 was showing it to you, not in terms of calling it a database, but showing you of that type stuff and done in normal world. Now they're starting to look at in terms of it being a database, but you're not doing anything on the computer yet. You'll start that in chapter 3. And please let me know that y'all are hearing me, because I have not seen anything yet posted. And remember, you do have to post some things out there in the chat box for me to give you your grade in place of the discussion. So they're going to go through on that. But real quick, let me mention one other thing. Last week's grade from doing the Collaborate session has not been posted yet. I was hoping to do it this morning, but when I got to school, I had a number of emails to answer, even though I answered emails all weekend. Before I finished up yesterday evening, I had at one point had answered 24 student emails on Sunday, and those were all that came in on Sunday. Since then, there were some more came in later last night after I called it quits, and I was working on some other stuff, repairing 2 computers, and also wrote my newspaper article for the week and doing just some other things for myself. Then I came in this morning. There was a number of emails again waiting for me from students that I answered first thing this morning. And that was 10 o'clock before I knew it. Then the class, that class, which is the CIST 2451, those lectures always run long, whether they're classroom or whether they're on the Collaborate. And I think we ran 1 hour and 10 minutes today. I was hoping to be a little shorter, but Cisco has combined what used to be 2 chapters into 1 chapter in the book. So I didn't even get to go to the depth I would have liked to have talked about some of the stuff. And then I gave blood here at the campus at 11:30. So you can see there wasn't much of a chance for me to do anything after that. And then by the time I got through with that, and I helped a guy out in the parking lot that needed a jump start as I was walking back, that then by the time I went and got lunch, it was literally pushing on it. And I was just finishing eating on that, which I had just come in a few minutes ago. Eating on that as it came time for the class. So those grades, I hope to post them later this afternoon. But I know I do have a session with a student at 3 o'clock, and I've got an errand or two I got to run this afternoon, and I've got a Kiwanis meeting online that I've got to attend tonight also, and I've got some personal things, and one of those machines I still got to work on. So I'm going to be working on that, because I've got to take an all-in-one unit apart, and actually I've got to look around and see if I can find the right screwdriver that I need to work on that. And I'm not using the screwdriver to pry it apart. There's 2 screws on the bottom of it that you have to not remove the screws. They're locking screws, and so they have to be turned just a quarter turn. And I need a flat Phillips head large screwdriver to do that, because the type of screw it is, it does not have any indentation in it, and I didn't have much luck getting them to turn yesterday for me. One did, I believe, but one didn't appear to, and I can't get it to go the other direction on either one. So I'm going to try a little further. So hopefully I'll get last week and this week's Collaborate sessions recorded later this afternoon. But I do have the list still, and you can see the first column is all of the students I attended in all 4 of my classes, all 5 sessions. Last week, one class I do have 2 sessions in. There's 50 students in that class, so I set up 2 different sessions for that one. So that's where we're coming from. So in this chapter, yes, it is. In this chapter, you're looking at the concepts of databases, and so they go through definitions for you at the very beginning. The first thing they talk about is relational databases, and that's what you're usually going to think about in terms of databases, is relational ones. And what that says is that you have a number of tables in there, that you have split your information up into various tables where it's broken down better, and I'll stop repetition in it, and that those tables are all related to each other by something. From what I mentioned last week, for instance, that the customer table would be related back to your orders table, because the customer table has all of your customers' information, their name, their address, all of that, where in the orders table, there's multiple orders for each customer. So you've only put in the information once as far as their name and address and such things. So there's a relationship between the tables. So in that orders table, it would have a customer number that points back to the customer table that has customer numbers, that has customer numbers in that the customer table, and that gives the linkage between all of that. And so then, even though you don't have the name of the customer in the order table on the line with it, you actually have the customer number there. But when you go to pull data from it, you can pull between the 2 tables together and get all that information like you want it. So they're relational, because the information in there is related to other information. Now, there are out there also some databases that are set up a little different, but if it's really a decent database, it's going to be a relational database. So normally when you hear about a database, it's a relational database. They then talk about the terms within them and throw you a number of terms down here. So they talk about entities, attributes, and relationships. So your entities, actually in most databases, when you look at it, you're going to see entities looking like rows to you, because it's quite often a row, but it's the information about something. So for instance, in the customer database, each of your customers is an entity. Now, each of those customers has made of a number of attributes. So entities are made up of attributes. The attributes are your individual values assigned to that entity. So if I was a customer for Tal, then I would be in the customer database, and it would have my first name, Dwight. Actually, that's my middle name, but it's treated as first name. My last name, Watt. My street address, and the city that I live in, and that I live in Georgia, and my zip code, and may have some other information about me. I gave blood this morning, so guess what? Blood Assurance has got me in their database, and in that database, it's got an entry for me, and they've got their blood, my blood type, and that type information that stays constant on me. They should have in their database, if it's set up right, the times I've made donations to them. Should be in a different table that gives the date of the donation and probably the location of the donation, and some other information that just deals with that specific donation, and then has my number that was assigned to me back in their patient database, whatever they want, donor database. It would be a donor because I was a donor for them. So there's a relationship there. So that's the third part they tell you about there, is that these things are all related. And hopefully y'all gotten the idea of what relationships are right there, of that it's how one table relates to another. Okay. And then they talk a little bit about functional dependence. And that's saying that if you've got something in the table in your database, that there's something in there that is dependent on knowing the value of something of a specific value from another table, and that's in turn used to do on it. So it makes it dependent on others. So they're gonna, so they go through and lead you through on that one, and point out that when you, if it's functionally dependent, when it looks in that other table, that there's only one value in that table that will match back across. Now, you can have multiple things in there. So if they give the example of that the customer table and the rep table, and go, if they had in the of whether or not the customer name is functionally dependent on the rep number. No, it's not, because just knowing the rep number does not give you the customer name. There's multiple customer names for each rep, so it's not functionally dependent. But if it finds only one thing for that rep number, which would be the rep name and stuff, then there's a functional dependence on that. So they go through on that, but I wouldn't bury yourself very long on trying to get that concept down straight for yourself. Primary keys are important for you to be aware of, just like those original three definitions. Primary key says that we have set up our table and that it is organized and has something in it that is unique for each record. So we can set something as the primary key and go, this is the main way to find items in that table. Now, normally that also means that your data is also kept in that primary key order, although, yeah, it does need to be. So it's going to be maintained in the order of the primary key. But by having the primary key there, that something else that has a value for that primary key, that will pull one record out of that table. So it really follows along with functional dependence. So you'll have, a lot of your tables are going to have a primary key on it. Now, not all tables are going to have a primary key, but any table that has data that's used in relation to another one that makes something unique to grab on it would use a primary key. So our rep table is going to have a primary key. The rep number will be our primary key, not the name, because it's got to be something unique. And last names are always unique. We know plenty of people that have the same last name as us. First name's not unique, and even first last name is not unique. So it's got to be something that's unique. So a lot of times that's where you actually come up with a value for it. And that would be our customer number, for instance. So that's what the primary keys are. There are also secondary keys, which I guess they don't mention those to you right here. Be enough. But secondary key is one that you've got, it breaks it down even further, and so you're getting it broken further on it. But that's not mentioned to you in terms of right now. As far as designing them, you want to try to break it up into smaller tables. You want to find how can you group this information into groups. And that's basically what you're doing. So they walk you through showing you on how you can break certain ones up on that and show you how on that. And that they've been showing you that already done in a lot of cases for you. But it's where you're going to go through, somebody says, here's the stuff I want in there. Then you're going to go through and see how can you break it up into smaller groupings and set up your tables accordingly. Now, the next part they talk about is normalization. Now, I'll warn you on normalization. Once you get beyond first normal form, it starts getting more complicated on you, particularly third normal form. First normal form is fairly easy to understand. First normal form says, all right, we've designed our database. We've come up with a number of tables in it. Now let's go through it and see where we've got repetitive information. Is there information we keep putting the same thing again and again down through our table? If it is, and customer name is a classic example, okay? That if you just built one big table there, or you built that orders table, but you hadn't broken it out, and you look at it and you go, well, we keep having the same customer name repetitive times and this other customer name repetitive times, and their address repetitive times. First normal form says, whoa, take that information that is repeated multiple times out of that table and put it in a separate table and build a link to it. And that's where our primary key comes into play on. The primary key also makes it real quick to grab stuff because it keeps it in that order of the primary key. So when you go to look up something using the primary key, it is going to do what's called a binary search, not a sequential search, to find the items. A sequential search says that we start from the first one and go on through till we finally find it. A binary search says we go in and look halfway down the table and look at that entry. If it matches, we're good. If it doesn't match, if it's less than that value, we look halfway between there and back to the start of the table. Or if it's greater than, we look halfway between there and the end of the table. And then we do the same approach again from those spots. And you can see you can real quickly get exactly to your entry you're looking for because it's in sequential order. Now, if it's not sequential on that key, you can't do that. So there is a difference on that, and we'll come back to that later in the book. But first normal form says get rid of as much repetitive information as possible. Ideally, in first normal form, there is no repetitive information other than a key to another table that's got that data that relates to that in it. Now, second normal form says go in and remove repeating groups. So if there's a group that repeats in there, get rid of that. That gets a little bit more difficult on it, but it's redundancy again in there. And so that's what you're trying to do in second normal form, is get rid of repeating groups. First normal form was get rid of repetitive information, but now get rid of those groups of items makes you move to second normal form. So actually, part of what I was saying on first normal form actually gets into second. But so second normal forms just get rid of repeating groups. Third normal form takes it to a whole higher, different level. So as a note, if you've got a primary key on a table, you probably got that table in second normal form. So in their case of their example, they've still got the actual rep information included in the customer table, not just a rep name, but the name of the rep. That should have been pulled out and put into a separate table. But the definition on third normal form, and that a lot of books never get real clear on this, but it's in third normal form if it's in second normal form and the only determinants it has are candidate keys, which are keys that you tried to use as primary, but you figured out they weren't as unique on it. So it's got multiple keys related to the table in there. It relates to multiple tables on it. Again, I wouldn't worry as much on third normal form as the first and second. All right, questions for me? But actually, we've just made it through the chapter in about 30 minutes. And I need to see some questions, comments, etc. from all of y'all. Does that make some sense to you about what a database is at this point? Again, we're not getting onto the computer yet. That starts in next chapter. You're getting it down in this chapter about what it is exactly. Again, I'm going to have you do the exercises. I don't know if I assigned them all. Let me look and see. I've taught this class a number of times, so I copied over the class from previous semesters. That's why I don't necessarily always know right off the top of my head, besides the fact, you know, how many classes I'm teaching, how many students I'm teaching. I've got about 100 students. So here in chapter 2, you're going to do questions 2, 3, and 4 again. That they've got requirements there for you to change on it. And then they want you to use shorthand again to do that. I will start grading chapter 1 tomorrow. I don't normally grade items until after the due date. First thing tomorrow for me, besides the fact I've got 3, it may well be Wednesday before I get started on, because I've got 3 online sessions tomorrow. I also am taking a beta exam for the Linux 2, the Linux Plus certification exam from CompTIA. It's scheduled for 3 hours in the morning from 9 to 12. It's got lots of extra questions on it from if I took the regular exam. The regular exam only has usually 80 questions on it, and they usually run about 75 multiple choice and 5 on it. And 5 hands-on with it. So, and a lot of others are scenario type ones, but it's not where you're going through and doing something, but they're giving you a scenario and wanting to know what you're doing. I may have twice as many questions tomorrow, because based on how me and the other beta testers do, we will but I will do that. Usually it takes me about half the time that they have for the test, but when I've done some beta before, sometimes it took me the whole time. So I may be tied up an hour to 3 hours in that tomorrow morning. And then I've got mixed in there afterwards to do several 3 collaborative sections. And so we'll see how that all goes tomorrow. As far as me knowing how I did on it, I won't know for probably 2 months, because they're using me as a guinea pig to then decide which questions they'll actually use. Those of us that take it as a beta, they charge us less for it, only $50. It's usually a couple of $100. But then we have to wait for our results, because they will go through, see how we all did on all of the questions, and then they'll make a decision on which questions to keep, which to get rid of. A lot of times when you're doing that, you're throwing out the questions that everyone misses, and probably throwing out ones everybody gets right, but not always. But even on the ones that everyone misses, sometimes one gets left in there, because the people designing it say that's an important question, and that question still needs to be asked. That's something we need to measure. So and then they'll end up with their real test questions, and then they'll go back, now knowing which are the real questions, and they'll grade our exams, those of us that took it beta. And then at that point, they will send us our scores, and that's the point when the real exam goes live. And normally, it's about 2 months before I'll hear back from them. I know 2 years ago, I took one in January for CYSA Plus. And it was middle of March when I got the results back, because actually I got the results back the week before everything shut down for the pandemic. I was at a conference with some others that had taken it too, and we got our results while we were there, and we were all comparing notes. So that's going to make a full day for me tomorrow. So it may be Wednesday before I start grading on the assignments, but I'll try to get them graded by Thursday if I can. But I won't guarantee on that on any given week, because life gets in the way sometimes. And the other part is the first thing I will do grading on when I do have a chance to grade starting tomorrow and on, is I will grade the discussions, and then I go in grading the assignments. And I usually start at the top of the list of courses, so your course will be the first ones graded. So, but I got to first, before I even do that, I've got to enter these scores. Any other questions for me? I would encourage you not to wait. So, I'm assuming we're going over chapter 2 now, which you're just now going to be should be getting ready to get started, and we'll be on it for the next 2 weeks. So we'll go talk about it a little again next week also, and that you can email me at any time with any questions also. Anything else? If not, I'm going to stop the recording. I'm going to wait just a second to see if there's anything else. So